Hello everyone, my name is Rave and welcome to my new series about the evolution of my front hinge flipper designs in BesiegeBots. You might recognize my voice from the BesiegeBots tutorial series, but this series is going to focus on my own bots, therefore it's going to be posted on my own channel. Let's get started. Before we look over the robots in front of us here, let me tell you about how this series is going to play out. Each episode, I will show you a different robot or version of a robot that I already showed off before. We are going to talk about the design of the robot, the build, what time it was made, and what tournaments it competed in. So, there's not much more to explain. Let's get into this. These two here are not really my first front hinge flippers. However, they are my first solidly performing front hinge flippers, I would say. And these two bots were the ones that piqued my interest in building this kind of robot. So let's get started with our main setup over here. I'm going to do a top-down view as well. It's a fairly standard design for a front hinge flipper. This robot was built in around the middle of 2022. Now, information here is that I joined BesiegeBots late 2021, the second to last tournament of 2021, in fact, Super Heavy Slaughter. So, it hasn't been so much time since I joined the server, and I really wanted to build a front hinge flipper for a while, so I gave it a good shot on one of these days, and this was the result. Of course, at the time of recording, it is 2024, so quite a bit of time has passed since then, and designs have improved quite a lot, but I think it is still worth it to look through the history of these robots. So, let's see our notable features here are the two front prongs that are extending a lot more forwards than the wedge itself. I did not enable GoTo, let's fix that. So, the two front prongs that extend past the front wedge. These prongs were meant to keep vertical spinners at bay and to find areas and control bots that I could easily get under. Featuring a woodblock to woodblock connection right here. It's two woodblocks going into one. This means that these prongs are quite flexible, and as a result of that, they are quite durable. However, they are rather steep, and it makes it a little harder for robots to go up the wedge. As you can see, this here is the part that gets under, and they have to get past these blades right here to get onto the flipping portion of the robot. I will get onto how this works in a moment, but before that, let's take a look at behind the prongs, the front structure for this robot. It is very simple. It is just two spin blocks per side, enabling the flipping mechanism to fire just like that. So, there is not a lot of chassis underneath here, but all the reinforcement goes into the flipper arm itself. Here at the front, it is just a simple strong lock connection, and it is not very strong, so I wanted to reinforce it as much as I could. I put a cross-bracing woodblock here between these two that connect to the upper half of the flipping arm, and I put two double long woodblocks as well for a little bit of extra support. And under here I even hid a little stick, which is a desperation call. There was not much more I could put here, as a woodblock would have used too much space and maybe clipped into either the woodblocks above it or into the ground. I also have this wood panel here for a skid pad, which was useful for making sure that nothing hits the ground that isn't supposed to hit the ground. If we move backwards, we can see that the front of the flipper arm connects to this large wheel here, and this large wheel is what the flipping components themselves connect to. I'm going to despawn for this. So, you can see these two spin blocks here are the spin blocks that go off of this off of the flipper arm into the pneumatics. Now the pneumatics here, let me open their settings real quick. they are on 2 retraction and 4 extension. It's swapped. This, why it's swapped, I believe is explained in one of the tutorial videos. It's something that we call just besiege jank. There's no particular reason for it. It kind of just happens. So 2 retraction means the spin block here goes backwards 2 blocks, so directly into the pneumatic. This can happen because blocks that are connected to each other can clip into each other. So it will just retract the spin block into itself. This way you get more travel out of the same 4 extension as you would with just 1 retraction. So quite a decent flip there for what it is. The pneumatics in the middle are connected by these 2 wood blocks, which help with durability and stiffness of the robot itself. A notable thing with pneumatics is they like to go outwards from each other when flipping, so they will flex in these directions. And these wood blocks help a lot with keeping that under control. This here will be reflected in later designs as well. Now they connect to these spin blocks here, or these spin blocks connect to the pneumatics rather. This is the hinge mechanism for the flipping component of the robot itself. And this is what connects to the rest of the chassis via wood blocks. It is a very simple construction here at the back, just a double strong log with wood blocks connecting to the side chassis. The side chassis is 45-degree angled logs, double strong log connection. I did this so I would have an easier time fitting these wood blocks here and could give more spacing for the entire robot on the side here. If we turn on a collision view, or collider view rather, you will see these wood blocks here are barely connecting. If you spawn in, they are connecting just fine. These ones could have had a little more space, but at the time I just considered it fine as it was. It is the exact same on the other side. It's just 2 wood blocks going from this spin block to the side. Another note to take here is both of these wood blocks are connecting to different logs. The front one is connecting to the front, the back one is connecting to the back. There's also these side armor pieces that I forgot to talk about before. They are really there as just kind of armor and decoration. However, there is a mistake here in this design. If I were to lower these blades and angle them so they are less steep, they could actually be useful for wedging prongs. So that is something to take away from this design. Same thing here. If I made these up pointing blades a little less steep, bots could have had a lot easier of a time going up the wedge and onto the flipping component. These were the main lessons learned from this version 1 of this robot. It never competed in any tournaments, but that will change in the next episodes where we move on onto the evolution of this robot. However, there is one more setup to talk about here, and that is the anti-horizontal setup. It's not completely different than before, but I believe there are enough differences to talk about both setups here. So, the anti-horizontal setup features 2 plows per side instead of prongs, and I believe it is the same steepness of the flipping arm, but the flipping arm itself features a stronger design with steering blocks and wood blocks connecting to this rear wheel here. The flipper power stays the same between these 2 setups. That has not changed. However, the drive power has been reduced from 3 stack on the regular setup to just 2 stack on the anti-horizontal setup. This anti-horizontal setup was more meant for deflecting rather than tanking hits. So it's not the most durable in the world, but it does decent enough of a job of deflecting horizontal spinner hits so that I can get under and fire the flipper underneath the horizontal spinners. The chassis side-to-side connections are a little different than before, so let's despawn, and I am actually going to delete these two blades. Actually, I'm just going to move them instead of delete, so we can almost take a look under the hood, as they say. So, the outer spin block here now has 4 wood blocks connecting to it instead of 2, and oh, I completely forgot I added one more spin block here. So there are 3 spin blocks instead of 2, and these 2 here at the front have 1 wood block each connecting to them, and then a log going backwards to the connection that connects the spin block to the side. These 4 spin blocks here make this outer spin block specifically the most durable part of this robot, which is not a bad call considering how most of the major deflection elements sit on that block. So this spin block here would take a lot of punishment in an actual match. The rear of the flipper mechanism also stays the same, and I believe that is all the most important changes for this setup here. And it is also important to note that the flipping component on both of these setups, it was never really meant to wedge under anything. That's why they are so steep. And there's also one more design note here. On every flip, the flipping component itself digs into the ground. While this does result in more potential power, it also results in a bit of a risk that your robot will throw itself around as well. This was before the time I figured out how to self-write these robots properly, so there are no macros, there are no special keybinds for that. Those will be features that appear in future designs. I believe that is all there is to talk about these 2 robots. So, as a recap, we learned a bunch of things about how to make an anti-control bot / vertical spinner setup a bit better with less steeper wedges, and side armor that can also act as side wedges. We also learned the advantages of these prongs right here, and with the anti-horizontal setup we learned about a different kind of anti-horizontal wedge called a deflection wedge, which is, it focuses on deflecting hits rather than absorbing them. I implemented this design rather poorly in this version, as all of these 4 wood blocks go to this singular spin block at the front, and there's no support whatsoever to this other spin block from this chassis piece here. So if this spin block connection were to break, this whole side would be extremely floppy and a lot easier to hit. So there were still a lot of things to figure out for me when I built this setup. I tested with this robot quite a lot back in 2022, so there will be a follow-up to this, as there's quite a long ways to go until we arrive at my 2024 and 2023 front hinge flipper designs. I hope I did a good enough job of explaining what each of these setups of this robot did and how they worked. Next episode, we will be taking a look at the evolution of this robot, which will finally have a name and a better color scheme. That robot will have been competed in at least 3 tournaments by now, potentially even more in the future. As for now, stay tuned for the next episode, and see you later.